I could just really get a sense of your heart, Jason, and you're kind of, there's a real ease to you, a very kind of very conversational, very real, down to earth, and I felt very relaxed, kind of just chatting with you. So I want to kind of carry that whole conversation into this time here. You're out in Nashville, and I'm up in Langley, BC. There's not much farther away that we can get from each other, but I think this will be
that's amazing.
Good time together. Yeah.
Yeah.
So why don't we start? Just give us a little window into, I don't know, maybe your day or your week, or what's a day in the life like in Jason Ingram, January, in the middle of January of 2014.
Yeah. Well, typically things can be quite slow in December and January, just in Nashville for music. But I always have something that's always sort of building up to the beginning of January that I'm pretty focused on, which is Passion Conference, and usually that happens January 1st. And this year, just for different scheduling reasons, it was this past weekend. And so I'm still kind of like coming down from the mountain, like it was totally. The time at Passion was just absolutely incredible, and we worked really hard on songs for that conference, and the album was recorded this last weekend, and we get to hear these songs for the very first time, in a room where people are pressing into God with these songs that we've been working on. And so that I actually just came home from that the night before last, and this week is kind of a mix of some different things. I've got it is a bit of an interesting life. I've been a writer here for a long time, and so I've got this week. I'm spending a lot of this week writing with a friend of mine named Brandon Heath, who we've written a lot of songs for his albums over the past years, and but then sort of in the mix of it all, I've got there's a guy I have not met. His name's Corey Asbury, and he's from New Life in Colorado Springs, and he's been a part of IHOP in Kansas City for years, and now he's one of the worship leaders at New Life, and is working with integrity, and so I've just been asked if we might have a bit of time together. So he's on a flight here at the moment, and I'll spend the rest of today with him, just hanging out and getting to know him, and so that's sort of my week. It's really random amongst and then all the normal stuff. Like this morning. Yeah. It's about getting kids up and getting breakfast made, and I try to I don't often get to be with my kids after school. Usually we try to get some time from dinner to bedtime, but I'm usually not around after school, so I try to take my kids to school every day, and that's and I love that. One of my favorite parts of my day. So I've come here from doing that.
I've just had an interesting transition in my life, because I love taking my kids to school too. But the transition I've just walked through is that my oldest son turned 17, and so now he's able to drive himself and his three brothers, or his two brothers and sister, to school. And I just kind of feel at a loss now in the morning, because all the kids just go out of the door and they're gone, and I'm like, what, you don't need me anymore? So, it would always be like, that's how I start the day. I get in the car, I take them to school, I have a purpose, from 8 to 8:15, and then I figure out where I'm going to go from there. So, how old are your kids?
So odd. I've got two girls. One's 10 and one is 7. So it's a fun age, but it's like it's full on homework and
yes.
I'm pretty sure the hardest thing I have to do in my life. I'm pretty sure the hardest thing I have to do in my current life is their homework, helping them with their homework.
I'm kind of the opposite, because I was never great at homework. So I'll be telling the kids, look, do you want to play a game, or there's this show I really want to watch, and I want them to come and join me, and they'll be like, I can't, Dad. I have homework. I can't go out. I can't play games.
Oh, wow.
I'm like,
that's amazing.
Come on, let's just go to a movie or something. And they're like, no.
Right.
And
that's amazing.
My daughter just posted this video that she produced last night. She's 15 years old, and she does this video for a drama class, and it just was like stunning, the kind of shots and imagery and slow motion and stop motion and all this stuff. And I was just like, wow, it's so great to be raising kids and seeing them flourish in their gifts and, doing their own things. So
yeah.
So we are proud of our kids. So, just to give people a little context, because I wonder, how many people really know about you as far as, because your name is not as prominent as an artist name. I mean, we know about One Sonic Society, but we don't often see the name Jason Ingram unless we actually look on the author line or in the copyright line of a song. And sometimes I think as worship leaders and people who are singing all these songs, we just sing the songs and we don't really know where they come from, or we think they come from the radio station, or a songbook, or the worship leader just comes up with them. So, but I've really become aware, especially in the last, 3 or 4 years, as I've been, of course, I'm very much a part of the whole, song flow of, especially in the Christian music world, and your name has really kind of stood out as. What I love about you is that when your name shows up, it very rarely, if ever, shows up by itself. You're always coming alongside someone else, and you make them greater, and they make you greater in this kind of sense of community and in songwriting. And so that's what I just love about you, is that you come into this. And it's not about, building the Jason Ingram kingdom. People are flying in, coming to hang out with you, write songs, and you're trying to get to know them and get to know their heart, and then, work through that. So tell me a little bit about, I mean, I'm sure that reflects a bit of your heart, but what is the kind of the general sort of approach that you want to take call it your purpose in life when it comes to songwriting and coming alongside of other people? Describe that to us.
Well, I mean, in songwriting in general, I think one of the things that we see as the greatest asset to songwriting really is collaboration and team. I mean, I think that there, and I've talked to my friend Matt Redman about this, and there was a season in church music world where it seemed like God was really pouring a lot of songs that he was using around the world to individuals, but the last in the last 10 years or so, it really seems like God's chosen path for bringing songs to the global church is not so much individuals, but through community, and so I believe that's his heart, and then in addition to that, practically, it's so there's so many benefits. If I have to write a song by myself, it's going to take me days usually. There are the occasional moments where I can where God, a lot of us, have had that experience where we just really felt like God gifted us with a song in a moment that was pretty quick. Yeah. But most of the time, it's a lot of pushing and working, and so having a team or writing songs with team approach just really, it gets you past those moments where you might be stuck and someone else has a thought, and the songs get stronger where you might feel like something is hitting you, but if it's not hitting someone else, then that's sort of a check for the song, because we we don't want to just write songs that. There are times when we want to write songs that are truly just for our personal expression of worship, but when we get together to write songs, we're always asking God that He would use us, and He would give us songs that give words and give voice to what people are needing to say, and so and so that's just with team. Everything's stronger, like everything's better. The songs get written faster. The songs are better. There's more check and balance. And the other thing is there's reward in team. Like in the when something works, and when you see God using something. One of the best things about team that I've seen is when God's used a song. Like for me, Forever Rain, had I written that by myself, I would think, wow, this is really amazing how God's used this. And in my personal life, I might have some friends and family that can sort of can share that sense of wonder and awe about what God has done. But there's something different because I wrote it with Reuben. When I've got a brother on the other side of the ocean that we together get to go. Wow, it really brings the church together. And we get to celebrate things together that God's doing, and that to me is just a huge thing that I never thought about. But once you start seeing God use songs, it's really awesome because it really brings people together.
Yeah, I'd like to, if you wouldn't mind, if you could just take us into some of the worlds and contexts and relationships that you've had, because there are some artists and songwriters that are really familiar especially in the praise charts world, which would be the general, popular Christian music. But names like the Passion Band, that whole experience of writing with all those guys, and Chris Tomlin and Matt Redman, Reuben Morgan. These are some names that I think of as individuals in their own right. But I'd like to hear from you. What's it like? Working with some of these different pockets of people, maybe they're different personalities or different, styles that you have been able to adapt to. So maybe if we could just start, since Passion is so fresh in your mind, could you just tell us a little bit of the story of what's it like being a part of that community, that songwriting community, and it all kind of comes to this climax of last weekend. Give us a little window into what that world is like.
Yeah, well, it's amazing, honestly. The most amazing thing about writing for Passion Conference really is the pastoring of that writing process that's done by Louis and Chris. And so very rarely do we get to in my life do I get to write songs and have and be pastored through the process. And that's one thing I would love to see more happen in our churches as we're all beginning to write songs for our churches and see what God has for our individual churches as writers, to involve our pastors in pastoring us through the writing process, because there's a strength there that I don't get to experience when I'm writing more just songs for CCM and radio. And there's a power and a presence that's available to us. But to be pastored and shepherded through that is really amazing. So often those times are there. There might be 10 or 12 of us that will get together down in Atlanta, and so you'll have the worship leaders. You'll have Chris and Christy Knuckles, and you'll have Christian Stanfield, and then you'll have some of the people in their team that have really grown up as writers. So Daniel, Chris's guitar player, is a really great writer, and he'll always be there. Nathan Knuckles, who produces all those albums, he's a great writer, and he's always there. Redman is there often, and then there's a couple of us that have been invited to just be a part of this process with them. And so often it'll be myself and Matt Marr and Ed Cash at times that will drive down and join this team, and Louis will cast a vision for what we're needing to do and really pastor that process. And I'll tell you, one of the things that he said that was the most amazing thing that I'm still trying to digest. He also shared it at Lift Conference this year. And I want to apply this to our writing and my own life, but as worship leaders, we're to lead from acceptance, not for acceptance. And I think a lot of times we sort of, we exist in this balancing act of like we're creative people, and so there's a part of us that really needs affirmation from people that what we're doing is of value. And he wanted to just turn that on its head and say we don't lead for that. We lead from that. We lead from value and from acceptance. And I just think even as we apply that to songwriting, it's the same thing. When we're writing, we don't need to write to strive to write a song that people will think, wow, you're a great writer, or to get any sort of like value out of our effort. But we write songs from being accepted. We write songs from being valued. And so there's so much freedom in that. That was a word Louis brought to us this year, and those sort of things when you're gathering to write for your church, it's just such a gift. And the other thing that happens in the passion circles, which I admire so much, is we'll usually break up in groups of 3 or 4 people, and which might mean there's 3 groups happening at once, and maybe 3 songs are written over a period of a few hours, and then we'll all get together around a piano, and each group will play their song and in front of everyone else, for everyone else, and then there's this moment that is so beautiful where everyone else throws their ideas at that song, their arrangement ideas, their lyric tweak ideas at that song, their melodic tweak ideas at that song, and in that moment, that song goes from being a good song to being a really good song, and it's and the amazing thing is the amazing thing in that moment is all that input is not reflected in song splits. So, which I just think is really beautiful. You'll have someone like a Chris Tomlin or a Matt Redman or a Louis Giglio say, hey, what about this for that section, or what about this for that section, and we all do that to each other's songs, but no one's looking for a piece of the song. Everyone just wants that song to be the best it can be, to serve the church and the best that it can, and that is such a beautiful behind the scenes thing that happens there, that I think in that God's really, really honored that open hands approach, and so that's another thing even as that I take away and I take back from when I've been writing there. Like I really want to, if I've got written a song with someone and you happen to be one of the people that get to sort of hear it first and you've got some thoughts, I never want to be defensive. I never want to think, well, I wrote that for a reason. Like I'm learning to be really open to other people's thoughts, and being open-handed with the songs God gives us, and being willing to work, being willing to write and to rewrite and to rewrite. There's songs that were led, 3 days ago that people will have no idea how long we worked on those songs. They were written 5 different ways. There's 4 different verses on the opening song. There's 4 different verses to that song. We finally got the one we all felt was right at the end, and that process is it's really inspiring, and I learn a lot to just keep pushing and to not settle. What's your part in Passion, like as it actually comes up to the conference? Are you a part of the band? Are you leading some songs? I'm not a part of the band. There to kind of experience it? At Passion, I'm just there to celebrate with my friends. But leading up to Passion, what I'll do is a couple of us will take the songs that we've written, and we'll do demos that are like full band demos, and try to help define what's the guitar hook on this song, what's the approach on drums on this song. And so I'll usually take 4 or 5 songs and work up the arrangement, so that because it's a lot for that band every year to jump at the beginning of January and all of a sudden have 12 songs and need to have arrangements for everything. So I'll take a handful, and Knuckles will take a handful, Ed Cash will take a handful, and we all will work on arrangements for those songs. And so that's sort of all through Christmas. I'm sort of walking into my room where I've got a little Pro Tools rig and just sort of wood shedding ideas and making sure that we're presenting these with the best arrangement, because there's very little time to make changes in an event like that. So you really want to take care to make sure the arrangements are right before you lead them.
Yeah, that's great. Well, I can't wait to hear. I'm always love the songs that come out of that whole movement, and they're very significant songs for the whole church, nation, and worldwide. And it's interesting how Passion has such a focus on that 18 to 25-year-old range, but the songs, reverberate way beyond those age ranges. But the conference is very specific in that way, isn't it?
Yes, it is. It's nice because there's a very specific vision for what they're after. Yeah.
Well, outside of Passion, so let's just maybe and maybe you have some ideas of some people that you feel like would be some good stories to share with us. But I just want to kind of get a sense of the community, the various little community circles that you find yourself in, and different personalities or styles or ways and preferences. Some of your songwriting, I think, goes on by email, lots of emails back and forth, or Skype songwriting. There's all different kind of ways that you engage in this co-writing process. So what about, like, just to pick out another name, a guy like Reuben Morgan, who is a really strong, well-established songwriter from Hillsong. And I'm imagining you don't call up Reuben, and say, hey, you want to get together for coffee, because he's just on the other side of the planet. But I know he's a guy that you have written with a few times. So how has that gone? You guys have what kind of dynamics go on as you're writing songs with the Hillsong group?
Yeah, it's really not unsimilar. I mean, I've learned a lot, because they are sort of different streams. Like Matt Redman sort of has an approach to songs, and Hillsong have an approach to songs, and then United have sort of a different approach to songs, and Bethel have their own approach to songs, and so you kind of pick up little things along the way. The thing about Hillsong that there's a lot of things I love, but they push for melodies, fresh melodies, like no community I've ever been around, and and so I've learned a lot from Reuben on that. It wouldn't be odd to spend hours together working on the right melody for a verse, and still not even totally know what our words are, and
right.
So and so you end up with these songs that have these melodies that just feel really, 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 really good, and but it's not, I think when the one thing that's true of every platform that I've been able to sort of lock arms with and write songs for the church, everyone's after the same thing. Like there's not a lot of everyone's just really, really wanting to see their church press into God and bring songs for their church, and so the amazing thing is we have these platforms and we see the impact they have around the world. But when you're writing when Reuben and I are writing a song, we're writing for his church, and those people, and what their voice is, and with Passion you're writing for an event, and those students, and what they need, and where they are, and what their voice is, and so I'm always just sort of reminded that. Our responsibility is to look at the people that are in front of us that God has us put us in front of to lead, and those are the people we write for, and then it's God's business to increase. It's not that's not for us. We don't ever know which songs are going to be used around the world and which songs aren't. We just look at the people that are in front of us and try to serve them. And the other thing is that I'm always writing from a very personal space. Like I never want to write. I heard Chris say once that when we're writing songs for the church, there's 3 checklists on those songs. And one is can people sing it, which has to do with like is the melody accessible to the average person? The average person doesn't have a 2-octave range. The average person shouldn't be jumping like a, we want to let melody sort of connect so that it's not like odd interval jumps and things like that. And so can the average person sing it? That's check mark 1. Okay, if that's true, then check mark 2 is do they want to sing it? That applies to, does it feel fresh? Is there something about it that draws them in? Is there something that's like not, well, I've just said that a million times, even though we are saying a lot of the same things, like what's our little thing that we can put on it that maybe helps us experience that same thought slightly differently. And so that's the, do they want to sing it? Or maybe that applies to is the vibe something that's like compelling, and that's the do they want to. But the third one, which I think is the most important, is do they need to sing it? And so we're always writing from a place of like, I want to say things to God that I need to say, and sometimes that's adoration, sometimes that's confession, sometimes that's dependence, sometimes that's just speaking over my situation things that I know are true. When it's hard for me to believe it, if I can sing it, God, you are good. God, you are in control. God, you are sovereign. To put these things above our circumstances. Martin Luther said, when I can't pray, I sing. And I think we've got this incredible responsibility as songwriters that what God lets us be a part of is we get to be a part of the things that people can lift up even when they've lost the ability to pray. You can still sing truth over your circumstances. And so it's a great thing that we get to do, and we sort of stand in awe of it, and we stand in awe that God uses us, and He uses words and melodies, and just always writing from a place where is it something that we need. Another guy I'd say I've learned a lot from, just speaking of different streams, is Paul Balash. He's someone that's just been like an older brother to me, and every time he comes through town, it's always, I never get any heads up. I always get a text like at 8:00 at night, and I'm ready to wrap up my day, ready to tuck in my kids, and I'll get a text that says, "Hey, sorry for the lack of notice. I'm in town if you want to hang out." and I always drop it. I have I've got a sort of an agreement with my wife. There's few people on the planet that this is true for.
Yeah.
But if Paul texts, even if it's last minute, I am freed and excused to grab the keys and go hang out with him, because I'm always inspired to be a better dad. I'm always inspired to be a better leader. I'm always inspired to be a better follower. And one of the things he often says when he's thinking about when you're writing songs with him is he tries to look for the people that are going to have maybe there are people that come into church and they're just ready, and then there are people that come into church and they're going to be the hardest. They're going to be the hardest people to get engaged, and it's maybe just he wants to look for he'll often say this. He'll say, I want the plumber that's on the back row, or the painter, or the accountant, or that's just on the back row, and he's just all he had to just get there, and he's got nothing else to. beyond that. It was just all he had to get there. And he wants to write songs for that person. And I've just always found that really inspiring and really beautiful. And so he when we're writing, he's always thinking about that person. He's not even thinking about 10,000 people singing his song, which he could, because that happens for him. He's thinking about that one person, and he's served in a small local church in Tyler, Texas, for I think more than 20 years now, and so I just, everyone's got sort of a different way, but you pick up different things. But the thread through it all is that it's true. It's true. God has not elevated songs in the church that didn't come from a pure place, and so we need to check. We need to check as we're writing. Like what's our motivation? What's our ambition?
Yeah, it's really good stuff. Hey, well, as you're talking, lots of people are writing in questions to me, and I always like to make a part of this live time that we have with you interactive with them, where they can send me questions and I'll read them. So, and one of the things I want to do in this is it's so wonderful and inspiring to hear about writing with all these great songwriters and the Passion Conference, and it feels so big and almost untouchable in some ways to many of us who are the small church worship leaders, and we're just thinking about, well, what about me? I want to write a song, and where can that song go? What hopes can I have of being a songwriter with significance? Although you had a really great word in the beginning that came up from Louis that says that we write from a sense of significance and not for. That was really, really great. But I want you and me to take the next 20 or 25 minutes we have together to really speak to, there's hundreds of people listening in who are they're just doing the work of serving their 50 or 100 or a couple hundred, maybe a couple thousand people, and they want to know, how does this, what does this mean for them as a songwriter? It's something, even in praise charts, we just had a planning retreat last week, and we were saying that we don't want to just be a platform for, the great, worldwide, national, super songs, which, and I don't mean any disrespect by saying that, but I just mean there is that kind of level. But we also want to encourage people to feel like they can also hear from the Lord and hear a melody and have a platform and a place. And it's really encouraging, because we've seen in praise charts, there's been seasons where, the number one song was, say, the latest Chris Tomlin, thing. And then the next song was a song by some guy that we had discovered through a songwriting forum that we had, and we just felt like it was a great song, and we put it out on the list, and we don't fabricate it. It's just people are just looking ultimately for great songs. They don't really actually care that it was written by Jason Ingram or or whatever. Sometimes they're attracted by, say, a Chris Tomlin or Matt Redman name, but often that's what encourages me, is there is hope for anyone out there. You can write a great song if you apply yourself. And I'm just saying, as as a developer in praise charts, that we want to help discover those songs and make them available and known and meaningful and significant, and give them a voice. So with that kind of as a bedrock, I just want you to join me in encouraging these people, and what are the steps that they can take. So I'm going to read a few questions that kind of relate to that, and you can just answer these just off the cuff. We'll just kind of go through numerous dialogues here. But so Sitzler asks, how is it possible to find a team for writing? I love to collaborate, but my circle is small. The churches that use my music enjoy it, but I'd love to have a chance to share my thoughts and inspiration with others. So,
Yeah, I mean, and I know it's oftentimes when we share on these things, it's sort of like, it can sound handicapping because my team is broad, and a lot of people are just serving in a local church in a small community, and don't get to write with the people I get to write with, and I do think you just do your best to find team within your local church or within your city. There are people in every city that have this passion to write songs that God can use in worship, and so I don't know, I just think that you've got to, if you look within your church, and if you can't look within your church, then look within the churches around you, and don't be afraid to step outside of the type of church you have. I think one of the things that's been really interesting is seeing, I write a lot of songs with Matt Maher, and he's a Catholic, and there might be, and then you've got sort of Baptist, and you've got, charismatics, and you got them all, and just it's all the church. And I think one of the most beautiful things that's happened from the community that I've seen is just sort of locking arms across what our church walls have traditionally been. And so I think one of the most amazing things you could do is if you're the worship leader at a Baptist church there, and then there's a Pentecostal church down the block, and you guys have never hung out, find someone there to write a song with. Watch God use that song in both churches, and that it's a real unifying thing, that songs sort of move beyond that. And I do know that it's difficult. It's difficult finding a team. And the other thing I would say is pray for a team. I don't want to. I really heard you when you were saying there's so many people out there with the dream, and they don't know how God's going to use it. And that if anything, like, reaches my heart, that does, because I'm 39. I turned 40 this summer. If anyone had access to writing songs for the church, I probably did for 15 years that I wasn't a part of it, but I was a part of a successful music career. I had every reason to have been able to write songs for the church with some of these people, in the sense that on the worldly side of things, I had a successful music career. It's only in the 5 years ago that God started allowing me to be a part of songs for the church, and that was my dream and my passion when I was 15. I've committed my life to the Lord, and truly fell in love with Him around a campfire. I grew up in California, Santa Cruz, and we would gather around a campfire, and my heart was really hard to the Lord, but I wanted to be there because my friends were there, and they would gather around with acoustic guitars and sing these vineyard songs. And in that space, God really softened my heart, and I really and used that time to help me fall in love with Him. And there's nothing I want to do with my life at that point than to write songs that God would use in the church. And that's 15, and I was 35 when God let me be a part of that for the first time. There's a 20-year gap. And I got about 2 years before God started using me in the church, and I was really getting burnt out on music, and I just started desperately coming back to the Lord and saying, God, the thing I really want. I've had songs on radio, I've produced artists that have been successful, but I've always wanted to be a part of a song that you would use in the church. My dream was always to walk in the back of a church and see people pressing into God with something He had let me be a part of. And that was my dream. That's always been my dream. And I really struggled with something that probably a lot of people that are on this stream with us will struggle with is does will God use me? Can He use me? Does He need me? Can I compete with what's out there? All of these insecurities, and I came to a point where I stopped writing for a couple months, and I thought about just truly calling it, because I wasn't in love with what I was doing anymore. I wanted to be a part of what God was doing in the church, and I went to the Lord, and two things happened. One, I realized that when God gives you vision or dream or anoints you for something, that doesn't mean that that's the moment that He appoints you for something. Christine Kane taught on that this last week, so it's real fresh on me. But when David was anointed as the king, he was 17. When he fully became king, he was 37. 20-year gap between anointing and appointing. And when God calls you to something, that doesn't mean that's the time for it. When God anoints you for something, that doesn't mean that that's the time for it. And so we just have to be really faithful to let the season of waiting be the space where God really presses His image into us. And the other thing that was really profound for me is I started to pray, God, and if ever there was a time in the world where there's too many songs out there, it's right now. There's too many songs. There's worship leaders in churches, everybody's making records, everybody's writing songs, and I felt a tremendous amount of insecurity in that space, and I started praying and saying, God, why would you need my songs? Why would you need me? Why would I be needed in this world where all of these, I didn't know Chris or Matt or any of these people at that point. Why would you need me? And I really sensed that I heard very, very much God's voice say to me, I don't need your songs, Jason, but I want your songs. I want them. The world doesn't need your songs. I want your songs. And it sort of changed everything for me. Like when we can sort of release this sort of, how can I add another thing to what's already happening? God's looking at everyone here who He has put a passion in them to write songs for His church. God's anointed them. And when His appointing comes, we don't know that, but we do know there's probably going to be a good season between anointing and appointing. We know that. He models it in Scripture. But the other thing God's saying to each one who's listening now that want to write songs but are just intimidated by the whole thing is, God wants your song. He wants it. And what He does with it, like that's some He's going to use around the world, some He's going to use in just one person's life, and some He's just going to keep for Himself, but He wants them, and those are that's what keeps us coming in and writing songs and bringing them to our churches. And I really relate to what you're saying there, and I think that the songs that God's going to use, I think there's songs that God's going to use in massive ways around the world, and they're not in this next season, and they're not going to come from big names. They're going to come from just faithful servants.
That's right.
And
my only thing I'd say, Jason, is I know you kind of say tongue-in-cheekish, there's too many songs out there, but in the other sense, we want to be communicating that there's never enough. Like it's
right.
It's an infinite well of creativity that we can tap into, and maybe what we're saying is that, I don't know, what is it, I wonder, when we say something like there's too many songs, let's just unpack that a little bit, because I think maybe you meant something more than just, we don't need any more songs. I don't think you mean that.
I think that's when I was sitting in an insecure place, that was sort of how I felt.
Yeah.
Like I felt like there's
right.
A lot of times in the music industry they'll call it the sound floor. And so if the sound floor is too high, having anything that shows up that anyone notices is pretty difficult. And so in an environment now where there's such a high sound floor, being a part of anything that shows up is quite difficult. And so I was intimidated by that. And so when I say too many songs, that's how I felt when I was approaching, when I was just crying out to the Lord and saying, like, you don't need me. You don't need me. And then, but Matt said something this last weekend as he was leading a new song, and you know, all these students are hearing new songs. He said, isn't it great to lean into these new songs, because it reminds us that God's doing something new. And I thought, wow, that's amazing, you know, like we need new songs, because it just keeps reminding us that God's always doing something new. And you know, I think that's a phenomenal thought. And the other thing about writing songs about God is He's an inexhaustible resource. You know, there's never we've never run out of things. We're writing about someone that we never run out of resource for our awe and our wonder.
Totally. Okay, another song, and I'm sorry I won't be able to get through all of them. To those of you who are asking questions, I think maybe at the end we'll do a shoot from the hip power question. You got 5 seconds to answer, and we'll get through a bunch of questions. But some of these, I just want to say thank you to those of you who are asking these questions, because this it brings this very much alive, interactive element. And some of these questions I read, we've just spent 10 minutes now talking about the last thing, but I was just thinking to myself, I'm so glad that I have you helping me, talk with Jason, and I'm speaking to those of you who are listening in. It really means a lot to me. So Lauren asks this. She says, do you have any theological or biblical training that you pull from when you write? And if so, what? The webinar title is What Makes a Great Worship Song? Can you give a summary answer to that question? I'm not sure if this is the same person asking this, but what is the, tell us a little bit about, if you have any, biblical, theological, how important is that in your kind of context for writing songs?
Well, I do. I went to Bible college. I got a bachelor's degree in theology, so I do have that background. However, I would say the thing that we all have, we all hopefully have two things. We all have the Bible, and we all hopefully have a pastor. And so those honestly, more than my college education, the things that continue to resource my songwriting are the Word that I have in front of me, hopefully often throughout a week, and then things that I hear from my pastor, and his sermons and the teaching that we can tune into, and even the availability we have from other teachers that aren't even in our hometown through blogs and the internet. Amazing resource for songs. So that's the first question, and then what makes a great worship?
Yeah, what makes a great song? We kind of talked about that when we talked about, you got 3 points of can people sing it, and so that's really good. But I don't know if there's anything else you want to add to that, because the context you were giving before is we're talking about there's so many great songs, but there's so many songs out there, and how do you write something that might get noticed? And so that's maybe a little bit behind, how can I write a song that's great? Is that even worth pursuing? Should that be on my mind when I'm writing a song? Maybe it's a bit constricting if I'm trying so hard to write a great song that I'm not just allowing the song that's there to breathe. What do you think about that? I
think a lot of things we've talked about are all pieces of helping to write a great song? Am I in the Word? Am I underneath teaching? Am I co-writing? Am I open to other people's thoughts on my songs? Am I tweaking my songs? Am I finishing and then checking it and going, is there a better thing for this, and rewriting? All of these things are a part. Prayer, asking God to inhabit the praise that this song will. There's all of these pieces. And all of that and then there's putting in the yards too. I never want to communicate to people that you don't have to work hard. I think there's a painter who's a friend of ours. His name is Jimmy Abeg, and brilliant painter. My wife wanted to start dabbling in some painting, so she painted a couple paintings, and we had Jimmy come over and look, and I thought, wow, these are great. She's great. She's gifted. And Jimmy looks at them and says, wow, these are great. He's so kind and so encouraging. And then he said to her something that I thought was really amazing. He said, "This is amazing. So I'm seeing a couple paintings here, and they're amazing. So why don't you paint 98 more, and then let's throw that first 100 away, and then let's paint your first painting." And I just thought, oh man, there is no, that's rough. But what his point was so beautiful, because there's no way around putting in the work, and so be diligent. The other way to write great songs is write a lot of songs. There's this last weekend there was probably 40 songs that are all really good songs that no one will ever hear, because they had to be written to get to the great songs that were led.
Right. We took on the administration of Dennis Jernigan. I don't know if you know much about him. He's one of the greater 90s worship leaders. So we took on his song administration as praise charts several years ago, and I looked in CCLI and I saw that he has written 500 or 600 songs in there, which I thought, wow, that's a lot. And then I compared that to Graham Kendrick, is another very prolific author, and he has something like 500 or 600 songs in the CCLI sort of catalog. And then yesterday, or just this morning, I saw that you've got almost 1,000 songs in there. Most people in the CCLI kind of song world have maybe 40 to 60, 100-ish or so. So it kind of speaks it to, and I'm sure that not every song you write gets submitted to CCLI for that kind of cataloging.
True.
So how many songs actually, let's just talk a bit about that, because someone was asking that questions of, how many songs have you actually written compared to songs that, people might sing through the CCLI type, song world, and then how many get recorded on albums? There's a whole sort of refining down of that. What do those numbers look like for you?
Well, I certainly someone who has worked hard, and I've written a lot of songs. I mean, I probably, when I first moved here and thought I really want to write songs that God can use, I wrote every day for a year, and so I don't know how many songs that is, but I didn't write on the weekends, but I wrote every day, and it wasn't a new song every day, but I did write every day, and so I probably wrote 150 complete songs, 200 maybe that first year. And every year since then, I write a bit less. But that first year, I wrote more songs than I've ever written, and only one of those songs was published and used. And so, I picked back up and went into the next year and wrote just about as many, and then started to get a few that were being published. And so I've written, like you say, that. In order, I haven't submitted songs into CCL. I've had publishers that do that. So those songs that get turned in, usually are songs that were put on somebody's album or something. And so I I must be approaching about 1,000 that have been recorded by a labeled artist and released, and that's an impressive number until you start looking at Charles Wesley and some of these people that have come before us. You know, he wrote 6,000, and so I write less every year, so I'll be lucky if I get, you know, to about 20% what Charles Wesley wrote.
Yeah.
But there's a, you know, I just think we just have to be willing to just be diligent about writing and just keep writing. It's I don't write great songs every day. I'm better at writing a great song now than I was 10 years ago, and I do write a lot, significantly less now. But there's no way around the work.
Yep. And I just do really believe that it's great that we sing Charles Wesley's songs from, you know, hundreds of years ago, but we still need, so every generation needs a new, you know, if we could have a new Charles Wesley, and you're kind of like that person in some ways, but we always need people, you know, tapping into the new thing that God's saying in every generation. And then we can always tap also back into the riches of, you know, if you want to call it the 2000s or 90s or the 40s or the 1800s or whatever it is, there's all these eras that God's spoken of, and we keep collecting the great stuff but constantly pressing in to write new stuff. It's really interesting, Jason, when you were saying if you're 39 and God moved in your life when you were 15, because I would have been about 19 or 20, and I was captured and moved by that same era of worship music. Because it was in like the late 80s, early 90s, and I can remember sitting in my dark bedroom listening to basically an acoustic vineyard, you know, worship album, and I had no idea who the artist was. It turned out to be Brian Dirksen, but I didn't know that at the time. And I'd turn the lights off and put my hands in the air, and I'd just like lose it, you know, in the isolation of my space there. And it's like I realized this is what I want to do with my life. I want to help people get this, you know, and it took a lot of time and working out until I figured out how I was going to be a part of that world. But it's interesting that, you know, you and I were both moved by that same generation. So really good. And I just want to encourage, we're going to have to kind of close things here, but those of you who are listening, I just really hear from me that I'm committed to making Praise Charts. It's not going to be a place where, you know, anyone can put any song, but there is a place for you that if you're writing a song, you don't, you know, have to get discovered necessarily by some big corporate, you know, publisher in Nashville or whatever. I mean, those are all great people, but the reality is it's almost like a lottery, and only one in, you know, 1,000 or 10,000 or 1,000,000 will make it through that world. But we just want to encourage you that you guys can press in, write songs, and, you know, and then we're going to create ways that you can flow them into our world, and we can help you create a voice for them. Right now we've got this Christian song showcase going on. Even now, we had tons of songs submitted, and we've whittled it down to 25. It's kind of like a friendly, quote-unquote, you call it competition, but I hate the word competition because that's not really the spirit of it, but we're just trying to find some great new, original, grassroots written songs. Next week we'll whittle that down to 10 songs and then find one song that will be, you know, quote-unquote the winner. But really all of those songs are getting listened to, they're getting shared, lots of super encouraging comments of people, and many of these people are worship leaders. One of my worship leaders from my church, I encouraged her, like, man, you got to get a song into this. And And so she did that, lots of local people. So this is not a world that is closed out to, just the chosen few. And it's a real privilege that we get to have Jason kind of listening in and encouraging us. And I just want to encourage those of you who are listening in, is you have your own context, your own world, you have your church that God's given you, and and a place of significance. So press in and go for it. And I hope that you find yourself encouraged by this time together. So any words to add to that, and then we'll kind of close it out here.
No, I love how you're talking about it, and I think this is an amazing place and home for all of us to encourage each other and hear what God's doing in our individual churches and share the songs God's giving us. And I just think it's fantastic. And I'm going to go listen to these 25 songs. I'm pumped.
Right on. People
amazing.
would be so encouraged if you would do that.
I am. I'm doing it.
If you want to drop a little comment, I can imagine if I was there and, Jason Ingram left a little comment on my song, I'd be like over the moon. So
I'm so excited. I love hearing new music. That's awesome.
Yeah, that's wonderful. It's really been encouraging. So you can find that link. It's from our homepage, or if it's not on the homepage, go to the blog and scroll down. It's called Christian Song Competition. But I want all of you who are listening to know that it was kind of a new thing that we really engaged with in this last year. And so now we're realizing we want to really encourage and emphasize this going forward. So we have some great ideas of how we're going to build this flow into what we do in praise charts, and you will be hearing news about new opportunities for us to gather the new songs that you're writing and create a platform to share those with others. And it is a bit of it's kind of like we're tapping into the voice of all of the people who can listen in and, leave their comments. And there's not just one judge that's telling you it's a good song or it's a bad song. You're putting it out for many to hear, get feedback. And I hope, as Jason has said, you create that open spirit of, hey, I'm willing to get feedback. I'm willing to hear from someone. Maybe they'll give you some constructive feedback, criticism, whatever you call it, but we're always want to be refining and rewriting and getting better. So thank you, Jason, for helping with that. And,
Absolutely.
And encouraging our people. It's been really good. Okay, I'm going to let you go on to your day. Jason, this has been a really, really great, very encouraging time, and thanks for your
doing this.
Absolutely. Voice. Yes.
I love doing this. Thanks so much.
All right. Okay. Thanks, Jason. Talk to you later. Bye then. All right. So that was such a gift.